Welcome, everybody, to the MSP Growth Zone podcast. I am your host, Craig Willard. I have a group of guys today that all we're going to talk about is per pricing model. If you know anything about MSP space, you know that this is the greatest debate on the planet. So what I'd really like to do is have all of our guests introduce themselves. We're going to each talk about our separate models, why we choose those models, and why you may want to choose that particular model too. We just really want to make sure that you as the MSP owner can gather enough information to make the best decisions to be able to grow your business really to the next level. So with that, we'll start with some introductions, and we'll let Josh take that away with an introduction and go from there.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having us. My name is Josh. I'm an MSP business coach primarily. I started my first IT company in 1996, sold my third IT company in 2017, and I primarily enjoy coaching people on what has worked very well for us.
All right. Nate?
Well, I'm Nate. I own Astoria. I started my business 6 years ago. We're based out of the Cleveland, Ohio market, and also the host of the Journey podcast. Check it out. Released in January here. So just really excited. We have a Workstation a model pricing plan, and excited to tell you why.
All right. Tim?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much, Craig, for having us. Josh and Nate, awesome to be with you guys here. I'm Tim Golden from Vital Tech Services. I've been in this space since about I don't want to tell you something or other. It really has not really had a label into the mid-2000s, right? So 2006, 2007, calling us an IT service provider or an MSP, as we all know about the sort of that acronym nowadays. Just recently, actually last year and literally this morning, getting the compliancy guys set up, what I recognized was the need for compliance in the MSP space. Craig, you're all about that, right? You know all about that stuff, right? And so I kind of have two services, my MSSP and our compliance services. And I'm Tim from Vital Tech and the compliancy guys.
And my name is Craig Willard. I am the owner and operator of Simplify IT. I've been in the IT space since 1999. We started this business in 2018 and grown and evolved greatly since then. We do use a per user, per workstation model, and we will discuss that in the future. But to start this off, Josh, Mr. Art MSP Coacher of the Year, what I want you to tell us about is your choice of per user model.
Sure. So this is primarily motivated heavily in sales and competition, competing with other IT guys. So at its simplest form, it's easier to go into an office and explain to a business owner who a user is than what we would consider to be a device. And on the competition side, if we can throw another IT company under the bus and say, look, we're per user, they're per device, I'm sure they do a good job, but the more devices they sell you, the more the bill goes up. So we prefer just to focus on the users because already know who they are. And on the last reason would be that people call us. Computers don't call us. Computers tend to work the way we set them up until humans start to interacting with them, and then they call. And so I like to say the difference of working with us is that we're in the human support business rather than the computer support business, and it makes us just a little bit easier to relate to.
Sure. What kind of things do you include normally when you do a per user model base? Now we're talking about network equipment and things of that nature, but specifically about the per user model, what do you normally include into that package? Like I said, you may have other line items, but what's in that package generally?
So generally we like to bake everything down to still bill it in a per user model. And I like to use a tiered system so that you don't go against the cardinal rule of sales of trying to oversell somebody and cram them into a box, which, there are a lot of IT companies out there that do have like an all-in-one IT company in a box, and you tend to oversell some people in that particular model. So we do break it up into tiers as to what we would include, but you're going to have, unlimited IT support, use this and abuse this as much as you want. I do tend to recommend that you strip out and bill as a secondary line item for things that are not consistent from customer to customer. These are things like line of business applications, backups, how much data they're backing up, and disaster recovery. And disaster recovery is very much in the realm of when do you need to be back up and running, and that's going to be different from client to client. But as it relates to help desk support, which is your primary reason for existence, answering that phone when Susie's secretary can't print, that is in all of our pricing models.
Understood. Do you use any sort of methodologies for cybersecurity when you talk about those models? Is that kind of baked in, or is that an additional service for you?
So we're going to have a basic, what we refer to as our tool set.
Okay.
And you're going to have some basic things in there, whether that's antivirus, whether it's internet filtering, whether that's some sort of, dark web monitoring. We'll bake a piece of that into our tool set. And then depending on the needs of the client, especially if they're any sort of compliance, auditing, then There's some other things that we can bring to bear, but we usually build those separately. Understood.
Thank you for that. Nate, tell us about your per workstation model and why that's your bread of choice.
And I've gone back and forth, and I feel a little like, oh man, Josh, the coach is here. He's going to destroy me. So I didn't bring my boxing gloves today. So we're a newer MSP, and knowing my market, we're a little bit more rural. We're going to have smaller businesses, and I really felt that Workstation has been the way to go with us because people just don't get it. Why are you billing me all of this to make the entry point into it? And I really feel that it works for our market because there are no other competitors in my market that I'm tripping over that are doing per user until they get to that 300 plus user base. We're really focusing on smaller market because that's our market that we work in. And I would really, I think that I've been maybe justified in that through Andy Cormier's book, So You Want to Be an MSP, because he talks to the smaller MSP owner and says, this is how you should do it. And he really brings that out. Now, he's probably going to come back and say, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I misunderstood him. But that's really my takeaway from that is the smaller, more startup MSP. And I'm the younger MSP in the group here. I think that works very well per workstation with the smaller MSP in the smaller markets for us. And I'm not saying that the per user model is necessarily bad. I'm just saying it doesn't work for every MSP.
Sure. Do you, kind of same questions I asked Josh, are there certain things that you include and then you line item other things outside of that? Or is this kind of like an all-in package that you deliver and it's on a per workstation basis?
Yeah, so we'd have different tiers based upon, let's say, what type of device are we actually talking about here? Is it a computer sitting on your desk? And so we're going to do AV, we're going to do backup, we're going to do, remote IT support on that. That's all included in that. If you want me to, you got a server over there, well, there's a higher price point with that, obviously bigger backups, more liability. Maybe we need to add some additional products to that, and we do. And then you want me to manage your router too. And so, again, there's additional price for that. But I really only have those three categories that we workstation out and charge them for.
And do you have cybersecurity built into yours, or is that an additional charge and rate for a package of sorts?
Are you talking about cybersecurity compliance? You're talking about training?
So, things like whether you're doing log monitoring and things like whatever you choose. So
I just want to understand your question, I guess. Yeah. Cybersecurity, like consulting and training, that's extra. So that goes into my consulting line. So that's not even a part of the package up front.
Okay, cool. Tim, tell me about, you're the per unit guy. Tell me about it.
I am. And Josh, Nate, thanks for that great stuff. And I've kind of played with all the different models over the years. It's interesting because a lot of my clients kind of are heavy on one side versus the other. We might have a machine shop that has like 30 people, but 2 computers. We might have the converse of that where they might have 20 different machines and only 5 or 6 people, depending on, one of my 3D laser printing companies has tons of devices, but only 4 staff. And so, when I look at my per unit model, my base unit is one human, one device, right? And so that doesn't always happen, right? And because of the way I tailor my stack, like protecting an email account for a human versus protecting 7 computers, there are different things in the stack that those dials I need to twist. And so I look at it a per, kind of this per unit. It's either one human, one device, or one human, 10 devices. If it's one human, 10 devices, that's 10 in my model per se. And it's always the higher of the two numbers that I go with.
And what what are the kind of the common things you find, not with, without giving your special sauce, but what are the kind of commonalities that you find that you're including in your packages?
Yeah, I mean, I think it very traditional, like most MSPs, RMM and monitoring, that kind of stuff, AV, backup, spam filtering, cybersecurity awareness training, dark web scanning, kind of this typical things that hopefully most MSPs are doing anyways. We're an all you can consume. We're very heavily compliance focused, so very heavily security focused. So you're going to get our SOC, you're going to get our SIEM, you're going to get our log and event management and monitoring and all that kind of stuff for your entire infrastructure. The only thing that I really line item out separately is vCISO services. So they're paying for a stack of stuff to protect their people and their devices, and then they're paying potentially for that CIO, that leadership stuff, and that's really just the two pieces that I line item per se.
Okay. And you kind of covered the hurdle of whether cybersecurity is part of your stack or not. So I really appreciate that. From our perspective, we started in 2018 with a per workstation model. We then migrated into a per user model. But, Tim, kind of what you were talking about, we really struggled with recognizing how to cover costs when people had extra computers and things of that nature. So what we did was behind the scenes, we went with a per user and a per workstation model, and we put our cost in there. And we believe that every dollar we spend should create should create some sort of revenue from us. And so we put those into buckets, and when we put them into buckets, they end up being in a user and a workstation model. And so if they've got 10 users and 15 workstations, we behind the scenes have 10 users and 10 workstations. And from that, then we get this one single price, of course, that we provide to our clients. But when we talk about what we include and what we don't include, it seems like we're probably quite a bit different. I look at things, so I'm from the HIPAA space, and so everything about me is risk reduction. And so I've learned that if we don't come in with the expectation that we're not only going to help keep you safe, we're here to keep our own selves safe from infrastructure. So here are the things that we're going to require that you have to implement in order to be a partner with us. Because if you don't feel that those are important, then that's okay. We're going to shake hands and we're going to move on about our business. And so we include almost all things cybersecurity, whether it's dark web scanning, as you're talking about, whether it's training, phishing testing, and things of that nature. We do backups and things that are separate because not everyone has servers, especially when we're talking about people that are starting to shift to Office 365. But generally speaking, we have went really strong with risk reduction. And the cool thing about that is it's really helped us weed out clients on the front end because they just aren't interested in that type of service, which is for us really good.
Yeah, that's key. And I think, we're pretty similar alignment in what I'm hearing you say is I'm very aligned to what you're doing. And, we kind of have a similar model as far as, the business approach in cybersecurity.
I think you just have to, we have to walk in there with confidence that this is what's necessary. And we have to be willing to walk from the table with confidence when people don't think it's necessary. And I just believe that that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be friends, that's okay. But we're here, we shake hands and, we check in and stuff of that nature, but it is our approach. Like I said, is a bit different and it's a bit stronger and we don't get all the wins and that's okay too. Like we understand that's okay. Josh, what do you think when you've heard all these different options? What do you think when you hear this?
So these are all the objections that I hear when I bring on a new coaching client. They're always, they have their model that they're tied to, and so there's you've identified the 4 areas where a per user model has an objection. So the first one I'll handle with is the complexity multiplier. So when you have how do you bill per user when you have a simple environment versus a complex environment? And the easiest way to handle that is we explained, you just add a complexity multiplier. So you have your per user pricing, but then you're going to increase that by a multiple that's essentially, you're going to charge more per user for the complex environments, and you're not going to charge as much per user for the less complex. So that we just handle the complexity issue with a complexity multiplier. The second objection that you mentioned is, what do you do for those small offices? And the easiest way to do that is with a minimum billing amount. We recommend that if you're going to go per user, you need to have about 10 user minimum. And it's not that you're overcharging by 3 users when you have 7 employees. It's that if I was trying to convert a mechanic that fixes cars into a per user billing model, there's a minimum level he needs to bill, because all cars, regardless of size, have an engine, have 4 wheels, have brakes, air conditioning. So we handle that with a minimum billing amount. Just bill 10 users minimum, and then increase it from that once they hire their 11th. The third issue you deal with is, I like to refer this as special needs, but that's we're not supposed to say special needs. We say specific needs, not special needs. They're specific needs. So don't say special needs.
Yeah, that was not.
I didn't say special needs.
Yes.
Specific
uniqueness.
There's no editing in this, okay, Josh?
We're not editing.
They're specific needs. They're not special needs. They're specific needs. And so we build those as a secondary line item. And then the last issue that you're dealing with, specifically, as you mentioned, to security, how do you handle? I love that when an IT company that I'm competing with throws small fish or fish they don't like the taste of back into the market. Because we handle that with perception. You manage perception. All right, you don't want to consume these services. Don't call me and complain when I didn't provide those services that I recommended you. So we just handle that with managing perception. So complexity multiplier, a minimum billing amount, specific needs, not special needs, and then managing perception.
Yeah, for sure. Nate, what's your thoughts?
Well, I want to respond to Josh saying that the minimum service. I think I get to represent the small MSP probably in the room. I think 10 user is too high to start in the market right now. A lot of the big companies are eaten up by the big guys, and probably for the right reasons. For the new guys getting started in the market, to say 10 users is the minimum, you're never going to do business. You just never are. And I got started with residential MSP. It seems like our business is moving away from that quite a bit, and we're moving into the larger business as we mature and our clients mature. But I really think the model that we have is working very well in the smaller space. I am seeing as it starts to mature, larger businesses make sense for per user. But in the small business space, they don't get it. Most of the clients that we're bringing on have never even had an MSP before. They've never had this idea. This is completely new to them. And so this has been a good way to enter them into it. They get it.
Are you talking like 2 to 3 user small space? Is that what you're?
I've got 2 to 3 to over 100. But yeah, I think that's that's the group that's the world I've lived in. And the other MSP owners I spend a lot of time mentoring and them mentoring me is that small space. That's small. That's small business America. They got 2 or 3 users, and they need support as well.
Yeah, you do see, especially as companies grow, that they tend to start to shed off the smaller people. And what you do have is the opportunity for a new MSP to come in and say, look, all we're going to deal with is these small guys that no one else will do with. The question really is, in my mind, this is what's going on, I want to say, is it's the concern of security. And so it's either being extremely transparent, saying we're not going to help keep you secure because that's not what you pay for, versus, look, we're going to give you what you need to be secure, but it's going to be more expensive than your commonality. So that's the hard part that we've really struggled with, is some of the smaller ones recognize that their risk is just as high as anyone else in this space, and they have to be protected on the same. But there have been lawsuits about MSPs because they didn't provide the services that they needed. The company came back and sued, and there's one up north that was sued. I think it was like $1.7 million lawsuit because the services weren't provided that would have helped them become more secure. Tim, what's your thoughts?
Well, you make a good point about that specific MSP getting sued. And if we've been watching the industry, the DOJ came out not too long ago about using the False Claims Act and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So, so there's the objection from the potential client or the existing client with, I don't want to do these services because I don't want to pay for it. And then there's the sales side of, but you kind of have to because false claims and all this other, whatever, it doesn't matter. So, but I want to circle back to something that Josh said earlier, and I like the concept, and it's kind of what I do as well as far as tailoring our solution. I liked the concept of the multiplier. I think it's an interesting thing that I hadn't thought of yet. Well, let me rephrase that. I do have a pain in the PIA multiplier.
What about special needs, specific needs?
Oh yeah,
specific.
It's not
Josh, you're getting canceled. I'm sorry.
This may not make it to YouTube.
But I do like the concept of the multiplier. And to circle back to Nate. So Nate, I know you keep saying you're small, you're new to the space. You know what though? You're small but mighty, right? Your years of experience don't undercut what you're doing. We're all here as a resource for you. I just don't want you to have a different mindset of you got this, right? And so I started off trying to do what I was doing with one or two human companies, right? The solopreneur, right? And in fact, some of those are now actually my largest paying companies because I grow and scale with them.
Right.
So a minimum set of stuff you need backup. Yeah, you need 2FA, you need email, whatever. A minimum set of stuff to try to keep them safe and secure to your best due diligence. And then you add on and grow, right? So, I'll take one of my other manufacturing clients that wanted me to just come in and review their 171 and their SSP Spurs score, right? All they wanted was a review. Come in, look at all the work that we did and tell us where, already go over their gap analysis. Came in from Upwork, $1,500, half a day's worth of work. Now, fast forward a year later, and I'm billing them close to 6 figures a year. Yeah. All from a little $1,500, hey, help me look at this thing. And it grows from there.
Yeah, that's really, Tim, SSPs are no joke. And that's $1,500. That's pretty cheap.
Oh, I know. Well, because I already knew the client. Okay. Co-managed. I already knew the client. Their head of IT is a good friend of mine. He wanted an extra set of eyes on it. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, $1,500 because it was literally only going to take me 5 or 6 hours because I had been coaching him all along, anyways. So, but the point that I was trying to make is really, Nate, for you with the, 1 or 2 human companies, the solopreneurs, start small and grow. This is where what I learned real quick in the beginning of my pricing structure was, let's say 2 people, and let's say it's $100 a month. We know that's not true, but I make it a 90-day contract, right? Things change in 90 days that they might need to do something. Okay, renegotiate and extend for 3 months. Okay, renegotiate again and extend for 3 months. Okay, after a year's worth of doing that, I've gone from my $100 a month to maybe $300 a month, and now I extend that for 12 to 24 months. And every 6 months or every quarter, as part of our quarterly technical business reviews, we're looking at what they're doing and we're renegotiating and extending, adjusting the price and extending, right? So it's a completely different thought process, at least from my perspective, is, hey, I locked this company in at $100 a month for a year. I'm good. No, I might have done that, but from my point of view, what am I doing to get that next $100
right in
this quarter? and then renegotiate and extend the life. So what could have been just a 12-month contract that they would have probably ended has really extended over 36 to 50 months, because every 3 to 6 months you're either renegotiating and extending. In my opinion, it's just a completely different mindset for the MSP. Like, hey, I locked him in for a year. Well, I've locked most of mine in for 15 years because I renegotiate every 3 to 6 months.
They've stayed with you forever because it's just what happens, right?
Well, if you think about it, right, because the general MSP model is MRR, right? Let's get that monthly recurring revenue. Let's build our stack and our profit margins and our percentages in that, whether it's per user, per device, per unit, whatever. We want that MRR. How do I guarantee that MRR forever? I continually renegotiate, bringing more value and more services to them and help them secure and grow their business.
I think that's a really good point. And I want specifically about value. So there's when we look at these Facebook groups, for example, for the MSP space, and somebody talks about adding a service, and I kind of go back to Gary over at True Methods. He would talk about if you can't, if you look at a service that you're going to include, and then you add your margin on top of that, and you can't sell it for that, that's a product that you don't want to sell in your stack. So that's the value has to associate with what you're willing to put or what you're willing to sell it for. Otherwise, it's not there. And the idea behind that really is that your per model, whatever it is, best be built on value. Absolutely. Regardless of which one and it best be built on revenue generation, because otherwise you won't be here tomorrow if you don't build enough revenue to keep the business going.
Yeah, you talk about Facebook, and there's always at least one debate a week, if not more, on any given MSP based Facebook group, or even LinkedIn group, or Slack for that matter, around pricing. And everybody, they're like, pricing is like noses. Everybody has one and they all smell. So they all stink. And I think, though, as far as MSP is, to speak specifically to your value conversation, is we undervalue what we do. Nobody ever questions the lawyer when he says, I need a $5,000 retainer and I'm $250 an hour. No one ever questions or negotiates, or I'm going to Sally because he's only $50. Like, that's what it is. Yeah. And we as IT service professionals completely undervalue ourselves and what we bring. And oh, by the way, I can take your company down in seconds if I get hacked. Unlike your lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Our risk is much bigger.
Yeah. Nate, anything to add to that?
What do you say to insurance? We have insurance for these reasons, right? Right, Tim?
We do. Insurance. All right, I'm going to say it. You've heard it here first. 2022 is the year of cyber insurance. If you don't have it, you're going to have it. And if you don't have the controls in place to protect yourself and your clients, you won't get it and you'll be out of business. Period.
So here's
it's already happened.
And I don't want to get too far in this because I want to talk about this in another podcast. But we had a client who brought us their Beasley insurance policy, and they gave a 27-point ransomware evaluation that you had to complete. But what they basically said is, hey, you're good now. We're not going to hold you to this, but your renewal in 2022, you got to finish this. It's got to be complete. And oh, by the way, your rates are still going to double. And just for the record, there's this new thing coming out that says basically if it's from a sponsored, a state nation, if it's from an act of what the government would call war or some sort of civil war of some whatever, no, your ransomware coverage is not going to exist. It's not going to matter. There's so many exclusions. This packet that I read, there were more pages of exclusions than written actual liabilities.
It might be time for new insurance then.
Well, Beasley's a big one, Access and all.
Beasley's a big one.
It is a big one. So it's going to be a standard. Lloyd's, all that have started to push. There's a new article out about Lloyd's in the cybersecurity. But however, there is one little phrase in that article that went out that said basically they're allowing their agents to bypass those clauses as they see fit. So it's not quite concrete, but it's getting there. Anyway, last thoughts about when we're talking about per models, whether it's user. The one thing that I would just want to say is just make sure you're creating and generating revenue and value both off of whatever model you choose. Don't build your own and decide and go with it versus debate it for 6 months because everybody's telling you something different. Anybody else, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I would agree. That was probably the biggest struggle when I wanted to go from the government space to the commercial space as a true MSSP was, how do I price this? And I just made a decision and went with it. You know, that's the beauty of the work that we do in technology is this wait 30 seconds, it'll change and change with it, right? I've learned to live by the F word, flexible.
Right. Yeah.
I think I would add the same thing. You know, I had to make a package, and I when I first got into this, I didn't know what my clients wanted, so I tried a couple of different, and this worked for our clients, and we built with it, and it continued to change over time. And every year I review that, and but it has worked well for our market, and people continue to buy it, and it makes sense in their minds. Maybe it makes sense because I can actually explain it. I don't quite get the per user model myself yet for our business. It doesn't make sense. So if it doesn't make sense to you in the first place, you can't sell it to begin with.
Sure.
At the end of the day, the thing that's out of your control is how is the client valuing your service, and you're not going to change the client's perception of your value during the sales process. You can change it eventually when they've experienced enough pain. I like to say in business, we can only do two things: we can add gain or we can remove pain. And in the IT space, we're not adding gain to these people's lives. Generally, we're removing some level of pain that they're experiencing. They have a revenue producing activity. They have humans involved in that revenue producing activity. They have tools that those people use in that revenue producing activity. And that's what the business owner wants his business to focus on. What do I do that makes money? Who are the people involved? And what tools do they use? And it's our job to make sure those tools stay up and running. And the customer is going to value you in one of three ways. They're going to value you as a function of time. You know, they're going to call and say, hey, how soon can you get out here? They're going to value you in a function of money. They're going to call you and say, hey, how much does this cost? Or they're going to value you in a function of quality. Hey, my existing guy's a moron. I hate him. He doesn't do a good job. How well are you at doing this? So when the customer's valuing you, the value has to exceed the price. You can quote them $1 million. If they think it's valuable, it'll close. If it's not, you'll never close, even if it is actually that value. The customer sets the value. And the biggest advice I can give to anybody is don't speak to somebody outside of the way that a customer values you. If they're asking you how soon you can be out there, say immediately. If they're asking how much does this cost, quote something cheap that's your minimum service, and then you can upsell them from there. If they're asking you about quality, there's nobody better than you. You just do a better job than everybody else, and explain why you're different. And I understand that a lot of this is more sales coaching, but if without the sales, you have nobody to provide a service to. And if you focus too much on the service by adding a price, then you have to go figure out if you can sell it. If you sell it and you know how the customer is valuing you, you can always provide a service with a profit margin.
For sure. Well, Tim, Nate, Josh, man, there's all kinds of ways to do your own business. You just got to pick one and stick with it and then evolve. As Nate said, evolution is so important. And if you aren't reviewing it consistently against your liabilities, against your own cyber policies, even because when you have your own policies, they're going to require things of you because you are an MSP and because you have additional risk associated with you, is just something to take into consideration as you start taking on new clients. I really, really appreciate all of your time. And I hope that all of y'all come back and we have another conversation about another great topic. I greatly appreciate it. And until next time, take care.
Craig, thanks so much for having us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.